Okay, here we go. Experts are forecasting an increased chance of a recession in 2025, and there's a lot of reasons for it. Tariffs, federal and private sector layoffs, the economic outlook is making a lot of people nervous. Even President Trump has not ruled out the possibility of a recession this year. So what does this mean to all of us?
Financial instructor Michael Masserant of the Retirement Education Foundation is here to talk about some of these things. So, Michael, what are we worried about? What is happening right now that the markets are going?
Yeah, it's been a choppy couple days for sure. So things are getting a little shaky on the economic side. We're having increased prices from tariffs, which was always going to be the case when tariffs started to come on. We're having consumer confidence slide a little bit. The federal government starting to tighten the purse strings. They're trying to cut spending and cut some jobs. That causes a little unemployment to pop up. And so when you mix all these ingredients together, that starts to make the consumer and businesses alike begin to worry a little bit about recessions. And when that happens, these things can almost be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if the consumer begins to get nervous, they start to spend less and save more. That means that the revenues that these businesses are seeing are reducing because people are buying less things. That makes the businesses a little more anxious. That makes them tighten their purse strings, and they start to hire less and give less raises and maybe lay people off. And it's a whole self-fulfilling prophecy that can really start to get ugly quickly.
Yeah, one of the headlines in the Wall Street Journal is, tariff wars are short-lived, but their legacies are not. So let's just talk about what a recession is when it comes to the meaning off of Wall Street onto Main Street. What does recession mean exactly? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for most people, the recession really kicks in if your job is impacted. If your job gets impacted and all of a sudden you had income coming in through your employer and all of a sudden that's gone, now that's a house for your household. That could be a depression. And it's really challenging to make sure that you're prepared for that ahead of time, because recessions can hit everybody differently. There are some people, in 2021, 2022, if someone worked in the mortgage housing industry when rates were rising quickly, those people had a depression confined to their own industry. There was no one refinancing in 2022, and so those people had and housing activity was much lower. So people in that industry really saw their businesses slow down. Now, people in other industries might not have felt that, but now they might feel it this time around. So just making sure that you are prepared for what could happen if your industry starts to get impacted by these things, trying to keep your household in order.
Yeah, so here are some of the things that you suggest. Increasing emergency savings, of course. What should that be? What should that number look like?
So we should have at least 3 months of expenses saved up in checking, savings, cash, ideally closer to 6, especially if you're thinking that you're in an industry that might be impacted by layoffs. We should ideally have at least 6 months of expenses. And when we're talking expenses, really we're talking mainly fixed expenses, because if we have to, we can cut down the variable expenses. We can cancel the Netflix subscription, we can dine out a little less often if something happens to the job, but having at least 3 to 6 months of fixed expenses saved in checking, savings somewhere safe.
If you are in retirement now or coming up on retirement, you see the market tank. There's no really other way to look at it right now anyway. What should be your concern? And if you're maybe somebody not ready to retire yet, is it just don't even look at it?
Yeah, so if you're 5+ years away from retirement, the answer is what it always is. Just don't look at it. The market's going to recover. This too shall pass. If you are within 5 years of retirement or already retired, this is why it's so important to have a plan, because this kind of market volatility, this is a relatively choppy couple weeks here, but it's normal for us to have market pullbacks. We have an average market decline of roughly 14% every single year. Some years are worse, some years aren't quite as bad, but this market volatility, for whatever reason, is normal. And if all of a sudden, at the first sign of danger, you're having a panic attack, that might mean that you're not set up properly in the first place.
What does the next 6 months look like? What is, and I say that because we've seen 800 point swings down, and then the next day it's like 600 points up, and then 400 points down, and then 800 points up. I mean, it's pretty volatile.
It's really volatile, yeah. And I wish I knew. And to be very clear, I don't, and no one can really stand anywhere, plant a flag and say this is going to happen, because there are so many factors. There's tariffs, there's trade negotiations, there's businesses trying to manage their spending, and consumers trying to manage their spending. There's so many factors here that no one's got a crystal ball.
Market just opened, by the way, 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, there we see the red arrow pointing down, which was anticipated for today. Michael, what defines a recession? Is it a specific number?
So very technically, the National Bureau of Economic Research defines it. Most people, the rule of thumb is typically 2 quarters of negative GDP. That's typically the rule of thumb shortcut.
All right. Well,
didn't we just have one of those too recently, like within the last year?
So 2022, you know, there's a lot of debate. Was it recession? Was it not a recession? Because there was some economic slowdown, but unemployment remained relatively low in 2022. So there was a lot of debate over that, the terminology of recession versus not a recession. But we just did have a pretty, a decent market correction in 2022, and we might have one again here. So all this choppiness again is just reinforcing the importance of having a plan and making sure you can stick to it.
Have a plan.
Yeah.
I love it.
It is intriguing, isn't it, when you look at the stock market, how much of it is based on just how we're feeling, how confident we are about what's happening.
And it can change up or down like that. It really can.
All
You're
right,
coming
Michael.
back. We'll see you next hour.
Fingers crossed.
More fun.
Sounds good.